From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
We're on the road at the first public university west of the Mississippi, established in 1839. We're here at mighty Mizzou. And considering this is where the tradition of homecoming was even started, it's only fitting that we're here for homecoming week. And we have quite the show in store over the next 60 minutes. With harvest happening in a hurry across Missouri and the rest of the Midwest, what could this mean for the markets?
Producers don't want to sell at these prices, and so they're holding as much as they can. Unfortunately, that means that it's got to go somewhere else.
Making sure farmer-owned co-ops don't just survive, but thrive.
One of the biggest challenges is, the question I get is, can this model continue to be relevant?
More than 2/3 of farmers are part of co-ops today, and we'll tell you how the University of Missouri is fueling that business model for decades to come. Bringing one tradition back to the Show Me State.
My ultimate goal is to bring Missouri wine back to pre-Prohibition glory.
How Mizzou is making sure Missouri wine lands an even bigger spot on the map. And speaking of tradition, meet the endearing group of Mizzou ambassadors.
We don't like to call them stubborn, we like to call them intelligent.
How one group of students is helping keep the tradition of Missouri mules alive.
The 2024 U.S. Farm Report College Roadshow from the University of Missouri is brought to you exclusively by Beck's. From farmers' first pass in the field to the final one at harvest, it's a game plan rooted in faith and belief. Beck's Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at beckshybrids.com.
Now for the news, John Deere announcing more layoffs. Iowa Warren showing 80 workers at Deere's Davenport Works facility will lose their jobs, and a Deere spokesperson says 200 workers will be laid off at its Harvester Works in East Moline, Illinois, along with 7 employees from its seeding and cylinder operations also in Moline. The company is saying the layoffs are due to reduced demand for products at those facilities and are not related to production moves. It comes as we also learn more about layoffs at ag manufacturing company AGCO. TV stations in Kansas reporting the company is laying off some workers at its facility in Heston. The company telling the stations the actions will impact fewer than 70 people. In July, we told you AGCO had announced in a filing with the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission that it planned to cut up to 6% of its salaried workforce, saying it's in response to increased weakening demand in the industry. And in the Southeast, recovery continues for farmers and ranchers who were hit hard by recent hurricanes. Now USDA is rolling out some financial relief. The Ag Secretary announcing indemnity payments for producers impacted by Hurricane Helene. Vilsack saying about $233 million is available for hurricane-related losses. That money coming from the Hurricane Insurance Protection Wind Index and the Tropical Storm Option. Approved insurance providers now have 30 days to issue payments to producers. And the agency breaking it down by state, including $5 million for Alabama, $12.8 million for Florida, $207 million for Georgia, $4 million for both North Carolina and South Carolina, and $61,000 for Virginia. These payments are in addition to payments made for Hurricane Beryl, Debbie, and Francine, all of which hit the U.S. earlier this year. Ag officials continue to tally up the damage from Hurricane Helene. The University of Georgia College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences announcing a preliminary damage estimate of $6.46 billion to the state's agriculture. The university saying the figure represents the sum of direct crop losses, losses to businesses that support ag and forestry, as well as workers in those related industries, and recovery and restoration from the storm. Helene was the third named storm to hit Georgia in the past 13 months. That's it for the news. Well, it finally feels like fall, and we'll have a check of your forecast coming up next.
U.S. Farm Report weather is brought to you by H&S Manufacturing. The Big Dog forage boxes feature stainless steel sides, front panel, and rear door and come in 26 and 30-foot models to fit your needs. Learn more at the H&S website.
Well, a major cool down, but not much rain, at least here in Missouri. Jack Van Meter joining us now with a look at the forecast and to tell us if that is about to change.
drought monitor just came out, and we're starting to see some more dry conditions move in throughout much of the country as well. So let's go ahead and break everything down. For the East Coast, honestly, fairly dry. We're seeing for much of the southeast and especially Florida, they've been seeing all that tropical moisture, which has honestly been more of a curse than a blessing to them. And actually moving up the East Coast, as we can see, just some abnormally dry conditions. Not too bad. It's not until we hit West Virginia, actually parts of Ohio as well, when we start to really crank up some of those drought conditions where we're seeing the extreme and even the exceptional droughts start to take place. Moving out west, especially to the plain states, we're just seeing a lot of dry conditions. A lot of dry conditions really moving in to Illinois and parts of Indiana. But take a look out here in Oklahoma, fairly dry, starting to see that extreme drought set in, and especially southwestern parts of Texas, really seeing the drought ramp up as well. And as we make our way north as well, Wyoming, and we're talking Montana as well, very, very dry. Again, extreme and exceptional drought starting to set in. And the issue is we're starting to see some water levels start to be hindered, actually, just because of the lack of rainfall, something we're keeping, of course, a very close eye on. Here's our precipitation outlook for the winter. This was just released this week. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, we are switching into a more La Nina season. So what we'll be seeing is actually above average amounts of precipitation for the Great Lakes states. And that could be snow or rain. We'll just see more of it. Same deal actually when we start to head out west in Montana and parts of Idaho too as well. But down south though, fairly dry, and that's going to be pretty much the same deal as well for our temperature. It's going to mirror that almost. We're going to be seeing those warmer temperatures down south and actually cooler temperatures up north too. Jet stream for this week, as we can see, we're just going to be dealing with a large amount of high pressure throughout much of the country, keeping most, if not everybody, fairly dry. We do have this low pressure that is cut off and is going to slowly but surely ride the ridge. It actually gives some folks a good shot at precipitation, but it's not going to be enough to, one, bust the drought or pretty much give anybody any relief. We're just looking at amounts of precipitation that'll be pretty much under an inch there before yet again we see that another ridge building up and giving everybody some warm temperatures for October.
Well, we have not seen many rain delays here, which means harvest is happening quickly. What does that mean for commodity prices? Plus, the recent hurricane means Congress will likely consider ad hoc disaster aid. Could that impact the prospects of a new farm bill? Ben Brown, Pat Westoff, and Alejandro Plastina join me from right here at Mizzou next.
Purchase with a Purpose is brought to you by the Mighty Micro from Mosaic Micro Essentials. We put more in so you can get more out. Visit microessentials.com to learn more.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend here at Mizzou. Homecoming week, as I mentioned it earlier, and I'm telling you in a second, you are going to see how much school spirit is here this week for homecoming. It's amazing. A big thank you to all the Missouri commodity organizations that showed up today for our live taping here in Columbia. We are excited. Some important things to talk about. We have a great panel lined up today. Ben, I want to start with you. We saw Mexico come in with a major corn buy on Wednesday. Another big buy on Thursday. Why all of a sudden is Mexico having such a big appetite for our corn?
Yeah, thanks for coming, Tyne. We appreciate you being here. When it comes to Mexico, they were our largest corn buyer last year. They were the big story as to why corn exports increased as big as they did in 2023. We've got a large corn crop here in 2024 that's going to allow us to continue that export profile that we've built here. And Mexico is going to certainly be a big part of that. They need corn. They're facing some dryness, especially in their prime growing region. And so I look for them to be our largest buyer again in 2024, 2025. I don't think that's overly a big stretch to say that, but certainly these are going to be a part of our program as we look ahead to higher corn demand in 2024.
Hopefully we do have that higher corn demand because we are hearing some impressive yields across the Midwest when it comes to corn, including here in Missouri. Pat, when you look at what we need to really boost these corn prices, if we are going to continue to see these supplies grow, do we need more buys from Mexico? Where can we find, do you think, some new corn demand here?
Yeah, we need some more demand, obviously, given the supplies we got here and around the world. So unless we were to have a shorter crop in South America than currently anticipated, we're going to have a tough time, keeping prices up at levels that people want. some new demand possibilities. Again, could we see some more growth in the biofuel side than currently anticipated is one possibility. I'd like to hope that maybe China comes back in the market at some point as well, but we're not 100% certain of that right now.
Yeah, speaking of the biofuels aspect, you look at sustainable aviation fuel, a lot of question marks. Are we going to see corn qualify for some of that? Could that be the big boost in demand that we're looking for? Alejandro, I know that you studied this intensely. We are seeing some grant money come out for some new sustainable aviation fuel plants, but what has to happen to really see that uptick in corn demand at these sustainable aviation fuel plants that right now are taking other types of feedstock, including sugarcane from Brazil instead of corn from the U.S.?
That's right. Yes. Well, first of all, U.S. corn would have to be at a reasonable price for them, for these companies, but they will take time to actually come online. And right now, the supply of sugarcane from other countries is cheaper. And in order to reduce the carbon intensity of corn, to make it more interesting to these refineries, farmers would have to go to invest, right? To spend some money to change practices, and that's costly. So it's a combination of cost on the farm side and also demand on these new these new refineries coming online. So there's also a capacity constraint, how much sustainable aviation fuel can be injected into the market at a reasonable price.
In order for corn to qualify, we will need farmers to change practices for corn production?
Well, not everywhere. There are farms that are already producing low carbon intensity corn with current practices. But for those that want to reduce their carbon intensity even more, most likely they will have to implement some kind of conservation practice like cover crops or reducing the tillage intensity and other conservation practices to get there.
Ben, I mentioned that we're seeing a big crop right now, and there's a lot of frustration with farmers. Harvest has been going pretty smoothly as far as the weather goes, not many rain delays. However, there are delays at the elevator. There are delays in getting the crop out, places in Kansas City, places in St. Louis not taking crop all day. And so where is the bottlenecks happening? I mean, Ben, it's not like we have a rail strike right now. It's not like we have some of those delays. So where is the bottleneck right now at harvest?
Absolutely. I think this is a big question. It's certainly questions I'm getting into our office here at Mizzou, and so I know it's on producers' minds and is a concern. As with a lot of situations that are of this magnitude, there's a variety of different answers, and my guess is it's probably a combination of a lot of different things that could be, individualized to each elevator. One of the common stories that I'm hearing is just the supply that's out there and the risk that's being transferred from producers to elevators by holding that supply. And so elevators are saying, we're going to put that risk back on the farm for the time being, waiting for the market to kind of clear out and move some product.
So if they don't have enough storage on their own farm and they are being reliant, what is your advice to farmers right now?
Well, so, producers aren't wanting to sell at these prices at let's just say $3.70 corn and $9 soybeans. Producers don't want to sell at these prices, and so they're holding as much as they can. Unfortunately, that means that it's got to go somewhere else, commercial storage and piles and things like that. And again, it comes back to who wants to hold the risk of holding that grain and potentially even the deterioration of the product while it's in storage.
Could the commodity price picture, could it change next year? Also, what are the chances we're going to see a farm bill? Pat, you're going to be answering that one, okay? But first, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more U.S. Farm Report in just a moment. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend for the second half of our marketing discussion. Talked about a lot in the first roundtable. All right, Pat, with the recent hurricanes, our heart goes out to all of the producers that were impacted in the Southeast from that. But as we look at the chances of seeing ad hoc disaster aid get passed, do you think that delays our chance of seeing a farm bill this year?
I think it's tough to get a farm bill done during the lame duck session of Congress after the election. However, it might offer the opportunity to provide some emergency assistance to producers for the next year or so. So we'll see how that plays out during the lame duck session.
Alejandro, when you look at the net farm income picture, I know RAF had just put out a report looking at declining net farm income, even though we've seen cattle prices, where they're set today, and some better news on the dairy front. Row crop, we're still facing a not a pretty picture here in Missouri. Do you expect this declining net farm income to continue in 2025?
Yes, unfortunately, we're projecting another 21% decline in net farm income going into 2025 because of lower commodity prices, and it will become, more challenging for farmers to actually cash flow their operations, mostly on the row crop side of things. But we have interest rates going down that could favor, extending the working capital over 2025, 2026. And there are a number of variables that could help mitigate those lower net farm incomes, but it will be challenging.
What are some of those that could mitigate the lower projections?
So, depending on the international scenario, we expect to have stable demand for beef, for livestock in general, with a good profitability in cattle. For crop, on the crop side, not so much, unfortunately. And again, it will be a matter of going through the downturn and surviving this downturn with injections of cash flows and injections of liquidity from lower cost lending.
Ben, what could change some of those price projections that Fabry has right now? I mean, we thought we saw some drought in South America. That gave some life to some prices. We are seeing some demand on some fronts, including those big buys from Mexico this week. So what could change that scenario that we could actually see better prices than some economists are expecting next year?
Sure. So we saw a $1 rise in soybean prices during the month of September, almost $1. It took three major factors to get that rally, right? It took increased stimulus in the Chinese market, hopefully spurring more protein demand that then would use feed grain and oil seeds. It took dryness in South America, and it took really the fund managers covering a record net short position in the markets to get back to more neutral territory. My position, or my thoughts here as to how we get to some higher prices, it's going to have to take a combination of some big factors like that to get prices to rally, because we have so much supply. Our global soybean balance sheet has the highest stocks-to-use ratio we've seen in decades. There is lots of soybeans in the world market. Unfortunately, it looks like South America is going to have a big crop as well. I say unfortunately. We never wish drought on anybody, but
we wish drought on South America, Ben. We'll just say it.
It looks like they're going to have a large crop, right? And then we look here in the United States, crop margins are not good. And that potentially could come, in the acreage picture. It's hard to take land out of production, so it's the crop mix that then we're talking about, and where those acres go is going to be a big factor in terms of crop prices.
Pat, even if prices stay where they are today, 2025 could be a challenge for a lot of producers that are watching the show this weekend. What is your advice to possibly weathering this downturn and this storm?
So a lot of it's the type of advice you give all the time. Try to do what you can, try to control your costs as best you can. Make sure you have a marketing plan that makes sense, that you're not trying to throw all your eggs into one basket, and trying to be realistic about the situation. You may not be able to hit a home run this year, so the singles and doubles may be the best you can hope for.
All right, well, that does it for our discussion here at Mizzou. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with much more right here on U.S. Farm Report.
Scan now to register for the Milk Business Conference 2024. Early bird rate expires October 31st.
Hey, Tyne, this week we're heading just down the road from you to Lafayette County, Missouri to visit our friend Ron Cordes. Now, Ron is known for his amazing collection of John Deere Gs, but this week we're going to check out his 1928 John Deere D that's a treasure with an amazing family twist.
This tractor is John Deere D. It was purchased in 1928. It's a 1928 model, came and was shipped to Higginsville, Missouri, about 15 miles from here. It's a one-owner tractor that belonged to my brother-in-law's dad, and it was purchased by him as one of the first tractors sold in Lafayette County in 1928. It belonged to Greg's dad, my brother-in-law, and it was handed down to him. It was again sold to a guy in Concordia back in the 80s, and we were able in 2019 to buy it back and get it back into the family. So it's a 3-plow tractor. Back in the day, it plowed with 3-bottom pull-type plow, trip plow, so there's no hydraulics. And basically, it was a work tractor in its day. It came in right after the horses and horse-drawn plows and took over. We have all the steel for it, what it originally came out with steel on it all the way around. We have all the original. Now it has rubber on it so we can move it around and put it in the sheds and everything, doesn't tear everything up with steel. It means a lot. One is we hope it's going to stay in the family forever, and that's why we work to get it back. This is one of our favorite tractors just for the uniqueness of it and the age of it and just the background of it especially.
Let me tell you, those brothers have quite the collection of classic tractors. They sure love their green, and they sure love Mizzou. Well, our College Roadshow is just getting started. Farmer-owned cooperatives are such a staple in rural communities today. But Mizzou is making sure that the tradition of co-ops will thrive for years to come. We'll tell you how when we come back with our Beck's College Roadshow this weekend.
You're watching U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition.
Mizzou is home to something very unique. As a land-grant university, Mizzou has put resources and attention toward ag cooperatives for more than 50 years, with faculty positions funded through a rural electric co-op endowment and an agribusiness position funded through MFA and MFA Oil. The university's focus on those co-ops has not wavered, as the goal now is to ensure that those co-ops stay ahead of what's become a very competitive field, not just in the U.S., but across the entire country. Travel across rural communities today, and one of the staples is still the local co-op.
MFA is a grain marketing and farm supply co-op with headquarters in the state of Missouri.
MFA employs 1,400 full-time employees, with even more part-time employees in the spring and the fall.
Well, it's founded in 1914 in Brunswick, Missouri, and it's grown from there. It's founded on the cooperative principles, and back then we were really a bunch of farm clubs or local exchanges.
He says the number of co-ops across the U.S. has changed, but the mission has stayed the same.
It's got to be part of the democratic control, the economic participation of the producers out there, and then also care for the community, because we're all in this together.
Not driven by stockholders, the co-op model is driven by its farmer members, a unique business model that requires a special focus.
GICL is the Graduate Institute of Cooperative Leadership, but it is a center here at Kaffner and at the University of Missouri that has existed for over 50 years.
Carrie Jacobs is a professor in ag economics here at Mizzou, but also serves as the executive director of GICL.
Originally emerged to provide executive level education on the cooperative business model to co-ops across the country. And today it still retains that purpose. It's to train our next generation of cooperative leaders.
Each year, GICL hosts emerging leaders from co-ops across the country for 3.5 days of education and training to understand the key challenges co-ops face and how to overcome those challenges both today and tomorrow.
One of the biggest challenges is, the question I get is, can this model continue to be relevant? It was a model that arose from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and I think some view it as a model that has served its purpose and is no longer able to be viable.
She says the answers to the questions of if the co-op model can move fast enough and make decisions quickly enough to remain competitive are a resounding yes.
Not only relevant, I think it's the perfect model for the type of transition that our economy is in.
Chuck Connor is the president and CEO of the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, and he says they estimate 2/3 of farmers across the country today still belong to at least one farmer-owned cooperative.
When you think about it, it's not complicated. You're giving farmers the opportunity to own, their own business sort of further down the chain, as well as in some cases, before the farm, and be a part of that.
Connor says somewhere between 80 to 85% of the milk in the country is now processed by a farmer-owned cooperative. And when it comes to ag lending, the farm credit system is also a major co-op model serving farmers today.
The cooperative business model really does enable farmers and businesses to think a little bit longer term than perhaps what many in our investor-owned community can think, where literally, they have to give an account and justify a particular investment next quarter. It's different in the co-op business model because of this generational aspect.
John Eiler is president and CEO of MFA Oil Company, an energy-only supply cooperative that operates in 8 states across the Midwest.
I think the energy business in general has changed drastically over the last decade. I think the energy products are changing, whether that's ethanol-based, biodiesel-based, or renewable diesel based, or now sustainable aviation fuel based. Those are different products for us. So we're moving with the times within that and following that, the way that market is going.
From fuel, propane, and lubricants to convenience stores across the Midwest to now even a solar company, Eiler says it's not just about having a successful business model. Co-ops are also rooted in supporting the local communities in which they serve.
Our motto and our slogan is "We live where you do." And that just underscores the concern for the community, rural Missouri, rural America, and also the fact that we give back to those communities that we serve. And that's a big part of the cooperative model and the cooperative system.
One way MFA Oil helps reinvest in the infrastructure in those communities is with fueling stations that sometimes are in very remote areas, which means they provide fuel that's essential for school buses and first responders.
Some of those resources in small communities are shrinking, but it's the cooperative model, and specifically with MFA Oil, it's our intention to continue to remain in those communities for which we serve.
Both MFA Oil and MFA also have a shared foundation that also supports students every year.
Year in and year out, we contribute about $900,000 to $1 million to mostly to education throughout our footprint. When you look at the high school seniors out there, we give close to 300 scholarships every year, $2,000 scholarships.
It's the community investment and support that's vital to the health of rural America, as the co-op model is also designed to be the backbone for businesses and for ag.
It's important to agriculture because we have co-ops from across this country whose primary mission is to serve agricultural producers and serve the rural communities they're in.
Co-ops are actually founded on 7 principles. Community is one of those, and actually our small community of just 800 received a very generous community grant from our local MFA. It allowed us to bring back youth sports to our small town, and I can't tell you how much good that has done. The community piece of the co-ops is so key. When we come back, it's a glimpse of ag around the globe. That's next. Now for a glimpse of ag around the world. Mexico coming in with a massive corn buy this week to the tune of 1.6 million metric tons, or almost 64 million bushels. Of the total, more than 41 million bushels is for the 24-25 crop, and 22.8 million bushels is for the 25-26 crop. There was also another flash sale of 13.4 million bushels of corn to unknown destinations, and more than 6 million bushels of soybeans, also for delivery to unknown destinations. The country is facing drought, which may be leading to the increase in demand from Mexico. And that buy coming on the heels of the country's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, reaffirming her country's ban on the planting and consumption of GMO white corn. The new president continuing to emphasize the country's commitment to food sovereignty. The stance continues to challenge U.S. trade policies under the USMCA, with the U.S. having filed a case against Mexico's policy. U.S. pork exports posted another strong month in August, and much of that thanks to a strong appetite from who else but Mexico. The U.S. Meat Export Federation says exports totaled almost 239,000 metric tons, up 6% from a year ago, but the second lowest of this year. Export value increased 8% to almost $703 million.
Led by Mexico on a record pace year to date. Central America as well continues to see significant growth, up 31%, a little over 11,000 tons in the month of August.
Hallstrom says in August, South America as a whole was very strong for U.S. pork exports, and he's forecasting records on volume and value on the pork side globally, with the fourth quarter expected to be the largest export volume season of the year. Well, that's a glimpse of ag around the globe. We talked about how dry it is in places across the Midwest, but is it hinting at a bigger weather problem in 2025? Chip's Corner is next. Welcome back. Time now for Chip's Corner. Chip Flory joining us now, host of AgriTalk. Chip, we've been talking about it quite a bit already this weekend on the show. It has been such a dry fall. Farmers saying this is the first time in their careers that they've only experienced one rain delay in harvest, but that dry weather is definitely aiding the harvest progress, and it is scary how dry it is across these fields right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And some of the growers out there would like to have gotten even one rain delay in harvest. Some haven't experienced that. And it's scary for more reasons than one. Number one, be careful out there in the field. Do everything that you can possibly do to make sure that if a fire does start out there in the field, that you can get it under control. So have that disc hooked up to a tractor and have it ready to go. Have the fire extinguishers in your cabs, all of them, to make sure that you can handle any fires that might get started out there. And it's a big deal to the markets for a couple of reasons. Number one, what are the dry conditions going to do to the final production numbers here in the United States? It's a big corn crop, it's a big bean crop, but did the dry weather take the top end off? South America, we've been keeping a close eye on what is developing down there in South America, and we're going to continue to watch that very closely as we get into the rainy season in Brazil. You know, and I talked with John Hominuk from Empire Weather Consulting earlier this week about some of the concerns that farmers have got about the drought this fall becoming a bigger weather problem in 2025.
I think it's a legitimate concern. I will say this, and this is something to keep in all of our minds moving forward as the forecasts become a bit more clear, is if we do transition back towards an El Nino, that should be generally viewed as a good thing. That would reintroduce some more moisture. If we stay neutral or we stay weak La Nina into the spring, then I think those lingering drought concerns could make their way into the growing season in 2025.
Yeah, one of the things that John said that we can do is watch the weather patterns in South America. If La Nina influences conditions, we'll probably see a dry growing season in Brazil. If we move over to an El Nino influence, we'll see a more regular rain pattern there. And we'll also see it here in the United States. La Nina is going to mean kind of an easy winter in the upper Midwest. And hopefully, that's one of the benefits of it, no doubt about it.
Thanks so much, Chip. You can catch him twice a day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. for AgriTalk AM and 2 p.m. for AgriTalk PM. All right, when we come back, folks here at Mizzou are trying to make sure that Missouri wine makes an even bigger mark on the map. We'll tell you how when we come back. Well, when you think about wine country, you probably think of California. But did you know the wine and grape industry here in Missouri generates $3.2 billion annually, with $1 billion in wages and over 28,000 jobs. It also welcomes more than 875,000 wine tourists a year. It is big business, but a team at Mizzou is making sure that Missouri wine leaves an even bigger mark on the map.
We are in my pilot plant that I use for making wine on a very small scale.
Step into Mizzou's grape processing and winemaking room today.
So I make everything from white wines to red wines, sparkling wines, rosé wines, every type of fermentation on a very, very small scale.
And it doesn't take long to see the Missouri Grape and Wine Institute has outgrown its current space.
It might be big enough for small cowboys and small vessels that I use, but not if I want to teach winemakers how to make wine on a larger scale. I need bigger equipment, I need more space, and we are very fortunate that the governor made this happen now.
Just this summer, Missouri Governor Mike Parson and state lawmakers approved $3 million. It'll be used for the planning and design of a designated Wine and Grape Institute Research Center and Viticulture facility here in Eccles Hall.
The wine industry is amongst the fastest growing segments of Missouri's ag industry, right? So with funding from our state, we're investing in a new fermentation center that will assist with things like workforce development and science and research for Missouri's grape growers.
Christopher Dalbert, who's chancellor and dean of CAFNR here at Mizzou, says this investment embraces the university's land grant mission.
The workforce that's needed to manufacture those products will get their education, their training, their research from the Grape Wine Institute at the University of Missouri.
Today, the Grape and Wine Institute serves the 450 grape growers located across the state, which includes more than 1,800 acres of grapes.
We have people just getting into the industry here in Missouri, and we have people who've been in it for, now they're going on their second and sometimes third generation. So we have people that are very knowledgeable in the industry and people that want to learn more.
Dean Volenberg is the director of the Grape and Wine Institute, located at the university, but fully funded by the wine tax in Missouri.
What Missouri is really known for, on the white side of grapes, it's Vignoles, very fruity, nice aromatic wine. And then as you move into reds, we're known for Norton. In fact, that's a state grape of Missouri. So Norton's very important to the state of Missouri. And that's been here since about 1840.
From Norton and Shamerson that produce Missouri's well-known red wines to the Muscat grape that's used to make Moscato wine, the Missouri Grape and Wine Institute has major aspirations, which includes making sure Missouri leaves an even bigger mark on the map.
My ultimate goal is to bring Missouri wine back to pre-Prohibition glory. Missouri used to be the #1 state in the nation for wine. Prohibition put us back, but we are on a good path to reestablishing that industry, making Missouri wine known for its quality and its diversity.
Now, if you think back to Prohibition, that wiped out all of the things that we had going here in the state of Missouri. And we lost all of those cultivars because they got thrown out. So what I've taken on is to bring home some of these cultivars that went to France, went to Brazil, and other areas, and allow them to come back and be repatriated to the United States.
From exploring different cultivars of grapes to grow here, to inventing new wines for wine lovers to indulge, the Missouri Grape and Wine Institute is developing a new style of wine that both the new generation of winemakers and wine drinkers want to enjoy.
They don't want old world wine styles anymore. They grew up in an industry that's created by craft brewers, and they're very creative with their product development. We're trying to do the same thing on the wine side to make wine more interesting for the new consumers.
And it is the perfect time to visit wineries here in Missouri. So if you're looking for a trip, this may be the place. All right, when we come back, another tradition that's cherished here at Mizzou, and thanks to a group of students we'll introduce you to next, is helping keep that tradition alive. It's been 40 years since the first mule team was brought to MU in 1984 by Robert Kars, then dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine. The pair, Hilda and Louise, quickly became the goodwill ambassadors for the college and, by extension, the entire university. Today, a group of students is helping keep that tradition alive, and they're a hit everywhere they go.
Good boy. That's a good boy.
A dying art.
Probably takes about 15 minutes to harness them up.
That's alive and well here at Mizzou.
That's what they actually push against when they pull.
For 40 years, these mules have been the University of Missouri's favorite troop of ambassadors.
These beauties behind us are some of the Missouri mules. We have 6 mules here right now. We use them to go to public events.
And it's these 6 mules that are proud to be on display.
1, 2, 3.
Boone, George, get up!
As the mule is actually Missouri's state animal.
Missouri became famous when Missouri farmers first started to breed large draft horses to mammoth donkeys to get the Missouri mule. So these large mules you see behind me are pretty much emblematic of those mules that helped to settle the American West. And because of their hybrid vigor, Missouri farmers, the military, freighters, and pioneers really prized mules for their hardiness.
The 6 mules at Mizzou today are Tim and Terry, Bess and Rose, and Boone and George. And as you can tell, these aren't just any ordinary mules. These are mammoth mules weighing around 1,500 pounds apiece.
You get the best of both worlds of the genetics, and so they require less feed, but they have more horsepower. They are better in the extreme conditions, so whether it's really cold or really warm.
Mules may come with some misconceptions, but ask Dr. Dodum or any of his students, and they'll tell you these mules have the beauty and the brains.
Well, mules are smarter than horses. I'm sorry, it's been scientifically proven. Absolutely. And that doesn't necessarily make them easier to work with. Their personalities are related to their intelligence. We don't like to call them stubborn. We like to call them intelligent. And they think about things before they will do them.
That requires a lot of trust between the mule and their caretakers.
The mules cooperate very well. They really love doing their job, and mules will let you know if they don't like doing their jobs.
And members of the Missouri Mule Club are the ones who spend hours with these mules every single week, feeding them twice a day.
Boone, George, get up.
And driving them on the weekends. Did you have much experience with mules before coming to Mizzou?
I had never worked with a mule before coming to Mizzou. So I'm actually from the state of Maryland, so I'm from the East Coast, and the only reason I'm out here is for vet school.
So are mules growing on you?
Oh yes, I really like the mules, and they definitely have have a soft spot in my heart now, and they're really cool to work with, and learning how to drive, which is kind of a dying art, and that's really nice to be able to learn this tradition of driving and to keep that here.
A tradition that's being carried on here at Mizzou while helping these students make memories that will last a lifetime.
Hardly anybody knows how to hitch and drive these animals anymore, and I've got 20 students that could do it in a heartbeat, and that's pretty cool, I think.
It's these mules making a lasting mark not just on the veterinary students, but Mizzou fans along the way. The Missouri Mule Team is actually funded solely by generous donations and gifts. So if you'd like to contribute, we put that information on the screen. And they were so generous. We had so much fun. I even brought my little girls out to meet the Missouri Mules. They're asking for a couple mules at home. We have not convinced my husband of that yet. There is still time, but we haven't yet. Well, speaking of time, that's all the time we have this weekend. Join us next weekend. We are wrapping up our 2024 College Roadshow here on U.S. Farm Report from the University of Minnesota. Some crimson and gold next week. We hope that you join us as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.